Hello, BookTube. As some of you know, I've been doing a read-along of Frank Herbert's Dune novels with a group of other great booktubers. We started in the summer, and we're moving one book per month until the end of the year when we finish up the novels that he wrote. We're not dealing with the spin-offs by his son. And I received special dispensation from my co-host to do an actual read-along of each of these books per month instead of one video on the third week of the month. So we've been going through the books Dune and then Dune Messiah, and now we're doing Children of Dune. And I've been enjoying it so much, as I do every time I re-immerse myself in this world. It is just incredible. And it's always fun to encounter that world when you re-immerse yourself with people who've never encountered it before. The only problem, the only thing that irks, is that the world itself is so big and so complex that I wonder, sometimes I worry, if these read-alongs, even a weekly read-along, is leaving key things unsaid, leaving key ideas unexplored, and I don't like that idea at all. So I thought I would do this little addendum video. I'll try not to make it very long, especially for those of you who are reading these books for the first time. And what I want to concentrate on in this video is the central thing to all of these books, which, the central thing, not the central people, or, sociological ideas, but the central thing, which is the spice melange. And to do that, I want to talk about the planet Arrakis, the planet Dune. It's a desert world. It's mostly barren. Its deep deserts are inhabited by two remarkable kinds of beings. The first are a wild people called the Fremen, who have their own culture. They are adept warriors. They live by the laws of the desert. And the other of those remarkable creatures is the sandworms, gigantic creatures native to Dune that reach enormous sizes. 500 meters is not uncommon. They're big enough to swallow an entire factory in one gulp. And they patrol they are mindless, and they patrol the sands of Dune and come up close to the rocky outcrops where human civilization can exist. The Fremen know the sandworms very well. They mythologize them, they worship them, and they also ride them. That's their long-distance transport, is that they have mastered a way to ride a sandworm. And I wanted to talk a little about that because that is the place where melange comes from. And to do that, we should talk about melange. Melange is a spice that is the absolute basic undergirding currency of this entire fictional far future empire that Frank Herbert has created. And not just in terms of money. It makes the empire itself possible. Melange can only be found on Dune, and when humans take it, it increases, for some of them, it increases their time awareness. It increases their ability to sense themselves in time-space. And for some people who are either genetically modified to be susceptible to this, or who are naturally susceptible to it, it can increase their powers of prescience, of being able to see into the future, see the highest likelihood of probability lines leading into the future. Melange is also severely addictive. It deposits in the whites of the eyes, so the eyes become blue on blue. And it's deadly to stop. Once you become addicted, you can't stop or you'll die. And most addicts consider, it's very expensive, but most addicts consider it a necessary luxury because it extends life 2 or 3 times as long. It makes you it can extend a normal lifespan far in excess of what it ordinarily would be. And we get the impression in Frank Herbert's Dune novels that most people who are addicted to spice consider that a fair exchange. It's only the exceptional influences it has on some people that make it so crucial. There are many societies in Frank Herbert's future world here. There are many independent sociological groups. There are the Bene Gesserit, for instance, a religious order, an all-female religious order that have their hands in all kinds of politicking, all kinds of power plays. And their reverend mothers, their sisters just in general from matriculation on, enhance their physical and mental powers by judicious use of spice. And their reverend mothers access a vast treasure trove of previous lives, previous cellular memories, through an ingestion of pure spice. It gives them power. It gives them the ability to, for instance, to detect lies. It gives them enhanced physical and mental abilities. And it's been the foundation of the success of their order. Another group of people, even more fundamental for the empire, are the Spacing Guild, who have navigators who the portions of their brain that can be affected by the spice are exaggerated, either naturally or through mutation, to the point where guild navigators can actually navigate gigantic starships at faster than light speed through folded space. Which you would have to be able to do, right? You would have to be able to foresee the future if you're traveling that fast, because otherwise you would come out of folded space in the middle of a star, in the middle of an asteroid, in the middle of a planet. The guild navigators have ingested so much spice over so many generations that they aren't even really human anymore. They don't look human. They can't survive in an atmosphere without spice. They breathe it, eat it, drink it, they live it. And without their ships, without the guild, the Spacing Guild and its vast armada of spaceships, there wouldn't be any empire. I mean, picture the distances between habitable worlds, between stars. You would need sleeper ships. You would need generational sleeper ships to even cross that distance. You certainly couldn't have commerce or instantaneous communication or anything like that. No, the empire depends on spice. The spice must flow. We hear that often. And in the first book, Dune, one major house, one noble house of this Imperium, the House Atreides, has been ordered by the Emperor to take up possession of the planet Arrakis and therefore control over the spice. It is an elaborate plot that the Emperor has cooked up with House Harkonnen in order to destroy House Atreides. The Emperor is not meaning to make them powerful or rich. He wants to bring them into an obvious trap them there, and then destroy them. And he almost does. As you know, if you've read this first book, Paul Atreides, the young son of Duke Leto Atreides, survives, along with his mother, and they make an alliance with the Fremen, and they harness the Fremen's amazing fighting ability and also sandworms. And in the course of that first novel, Paul Atreides starts to get his first inkling that there may be some vital connection between the worms and the spice, and that therefore knowing all of this and how it works might be very, very important. And if it's important to him, it's also going to be important to us as readers. So I wanted to break that down a little for you. Just a little. You don't have to remember a lot of these details. I wanted to have a video apart from a read-along that makes all of this clear in order to help us when we get to later parts of Children of Dune and later books. So, basically, there are creatures that live in the sands of Dune. They are small, about the length of your arm. They are single-celled. They are mindless, and they're called sand trout. The Fremen refer to them as little makers. And they accumulate. They stitch themselves together in order to bottle up moisture and gases under the sands of Dune. And that builds and builds and builds. Those sand trout are the larvae of sandworms. Tiny as they are the larvae of these in their enormous adult stage. And when those bubbles of interconnected sand trout, who are instinctively drawn to moisture, they're instinctively drawn to what poisons adult worms. They're drawn to it, and they're drawn to encapsulating it inside themselves. Moisture, in certain gases, whatever they can, and it makes a very volatile mixture. And that grows and grows and grows in intensity until finally it explodes in what in Dune is called a spice blow. And many of those sand trout are destroyed in the process. But the ones who aren't destroyed, the ones nearby, use the spice blow. It is kind of a biological trigger that causes them to start growing and segmenting into adult worms. That is one side effect of a spice blow. The other side effect is that the various chemicals that are exposed in their unique combinations, they've been combined by these sand trout. When they explode, it all blows up on the surface into a patch. And exposure to the elements and exposure to a little time causes that patch to become melange. Now, that process does not exist anywhere else in the galaxy. We are told in Dune and in Dune Messiah that attempts to establish a viable breeding population of sandworms on other worlds have failed completely. The sandworms seem to be connected to Dune. The sand trout seem to be connected to Dune, intimately connected. But that's where it all comes from. And the people who realize that suddenly have a greater insight into this coin that buys the whole galaxy. The sandworm makes a den, sheds sand trout. The sand trout migrate to moisture and to gases in the sand and combine to enclose it. They do this by instinct. Those enclosures become larger and more unstable and more volatile and finally explode. The explosion not only signals to nearby sand trout that they should begin their maturation to worms, but also leaves behind a residue that becomes the spice melange that everyone covets, and that is incredibly pivotal to the events of Dune. So I wanted to go over that just so that we have that clear. That is the cycle that we're talking about. That is the connection between sand trout, between sandworms, and between the spice melange. And this is known to some characters in Dune, for instance, the planetologist Liet Kynes. It's also known to some Fremen. And it becomes known to outsiders who inquire into this: what is the relationship between the worms and the spice? What is the relationship between those two things? I wanted to mention it because it's important. It's the foundational gimmick of the Dune novels, and also because it becomes incredibly important in the second half of Children of Dune and all the books from there. So I wanted to make sure I made a nice, clean video without doing a hurried digression. So that's all I wanted to say for now for Dune. And if I can think of other sort of appendixes, digressions on Dune, I'll be happy to make them if you think you need them. But otherwise, I wanted to get that one out of the way because that's crucial. I will cover some of this Sunday when we continue our read-along of Children of Dune. And I urge you to join in if you haven't. Children of Dune is a heck of a book to read. I always forget how entertaining it is. So I'm going to wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.